Hello and welcome to the Sonic Cinema podcast. My name is Brian Scuttle. Thank you for joining me at www.sonic-cinema.com, as well as the Sonic Cinema podcast YouTube channel. Can also subscribe at Apple and Google Podcasts, as well as Spotify, to listen to the podcast. In addition to the YouTube channel, you can also check us out at patreon.com/soniccinema. There you'll find early access to reviews for movies that are coming out, little write-ups on movies, older movies and TV shows that I'm watching for the first time. And this month, for some patrons, you're basically getting updated sort of mini reviews on the DCEU in preparation for Zack Snyder's Justice League. That's at patreon.com/soniccinema. This episode is, it's actually filling a bit of a blind spot for me over the years. I had heard about this movie. I was familiar with the movie's reputation, but I hadn't seen it yet. And with the upcoming release of Criterion Collection's box set for director Wong Kar-Wai, I decided it was time to go ahead and watch his 2000 movie, In the Mood for Love, for the first time. And joining me to discuss it is filmmaker Christopher DiNunzio. Thank you very much for joining me, Chris.
Thank you for having me, man. I appreciate it.
What was your first experience watching In the Mood for Love?
So mine was, it's a nice one actually, because it was pretty much when it was released in, but I think I released here in 2021. Sorry, 2001.
Yeah, I believe that's when it hit the States. Yeah.
Okay, so it had to be a couple years after which I met my now fiance, and she was studying film as well, and she introduced me to the film, and I immediately fell in love with the cinematography. Mm-hmm. And that was just, and then thankfully we're still together. So that kept it going. But that was my first time, early 2000s. Had to be a few years after it was released. I didn't see it right away. And then she introduced it to me, and I was hooked. And then it just seems like each year that love gets stronger and stronger for that film for me.
Mm-hmm. Had you seen any of Wong Kar-Wai's films prior to In the Mood for Love?
I don't think so. I thought I did. No, I didn't. Because then after that, I became a big fan of Christopher Doyle and then Wong Kar-Wai, and that's when I started watching the older films that they worked on together, which you got like Chungking Express and things like that. And I'm just a huge fan of all of them now, and the whole style and everything.
Yeah, like I said, I just watched this for the first time in preparation for this podcast, and funny because of the fact that I'm actually going to be talking about this on a podcast I'm going to be guesting on when it comes to music and as far as and film soundtracks. And the cinematography by Christopher Doyle is justly famous for this movie. It's absolutely a beautiful movie to watch. And one of the things that I've noticed, I actually watched it a couple of times in the past week or so in preparation for both of those podcasts, is the use of music. And I love the thing that is interesting about music, and it's not just where you put music, it's where you don't put music. I think that's just as important in a movie. And Wong Kar-Wai uses music very sparingly in this film, and there are only a couple of main pieces that come into play that are really kind of motifs that go throughout the film as we go through the emotional journey that the characters go through in this film. And that's one of the things that really struck me in watching the film, apart from just how beautiful it is.
It really gets into that point where you get it's such a visual moving film, the actual motion of the film, and then the music of the film. Really, like, they have these moments and they all really come together and tie together, and there is this kind of, even when you look at the cinematography, it's just besides it just being beautifully shot, the framing within a framing, the kind of feeling of always kind of being has that feeling of always being watched. And then also, like, you see them returning to these areas, and there's big kind of like circular motion of everything. You know what I mean? Like the relationship, everything just kind of going around, and it all elements. It is a good film because it's a good example of when you always get in those little arguments. What's more important, the script, this or that? And you can say all of it, and this is a good example. Like, it really does do a great job of everything.
Well, and there's some key choices in this movie and the way that he tells this story that I think are crucial to the success of this story. So if you haven't had a chance to watch In the Mood for Love, it is on Criterion Channel right now, and I know it was on HBO Max for a while. I can't remember if it's still on there. But so the story of this is basically you get two couples who rent rooms in the same apartment building, and they move in at the same time, and throughout the film you only see two of the partners in each respective marriage. The woman who's played by Maggie Chung, and then the man who's played by Tony Leung. And it's fascinating because, and the key thing that is so unique about this movie, and I think it is part of the reason the movie works as well as it does as a narrative, is the fact that we hear their spouses, but we never see their spouses. And part of the reason that's so important is because of the fact that both Mrs. Chan, Maggie Chung's character, and Mr. Chow, Tony Leung's character, start to suspect that their partners are having affairs, and they're having affairs with one another. And we see the film entirely from their perspective. It is set in 1962 Hong Kong, and it's fascinating to watch. It's such a simple premise, but it's anything but a simple movie, and I think that's one of the real strengths of what Wong Kar-Wai is doing in this movie.
I totally agree with you. I think also the fact that you have just the two people, but you're still very conscious that there's four people involved.
Yeah.
So there's still this kind of broader range of characters. Even though the cinematography is so gorgeous and it moves so well, there really is actually not too many spaces. Mm-hmm. So it's like a great example of like one, just simplicity and just well execution. And it's especially from a filmmaker standpoint, it's great to see like, look what I can do with little.
Yeah.
From going from a story aspect, making this stuff, everything feel bigger, from the way the visuals are, using very little spaces. But I agree with the whole premise of like them two and not seeing the other, and the relationship they build. It's really beautiful. It's like there's just always this kind of, with them too, the restrictions that they put on each other.
Yeah.
It's, you kind of see that as it progresses. Like there's always these misconnections with them, but it's like almost there. But it's just it's one of those things too. Both of their performances are just so phenomenal, and it's like you so easily fall for these characters because it's another thing I love about the story is how human it is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and there's a level of irony to the title because of the restrictions that they put on themselves to not get involved themselves with each other. And I think that's, and you see these moments, they have these moments together where they're sort of almost play acting how they would either how they would confront their own spouses, or how they imagine their spouses might have gotten involved. And that's one of the things. It's such a deceptively simple story.
Yeah,
it really is.
Yeah, I love it. And when I'm such a big fan too. I remember I'm such a huge fan of Christopher Doyle too. There's I'm blanking on who did it. I want to say it was like Seventh Art or one of those places. They were at Toronto, and there's a great interview with Christopher Doyle. It's only like not that old, like an hour long. That's great. But just digressing a little bit here. But watching him too. That scene when they were in, the big scene where they're kind of walking around outside, and it's a very like kind of rustic looking wall.
Mm-hmm.
What was really cool is you get cool videos of how they shot that, and that was actually, I think that part was actually in Thailand, but they were going for that 1960s China feel.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just amazing, like to see like when the way they work and walk through and the talk, because I think Wong Kar-Wai pretty much only had like an outline, I believe. Yeah. How they started, and I have heard he's very like he's very up for interpretations and other people's doing. He seems open minded. He has this kind of collaborative process, which is pretty cool. But I always remember that is hearing about how he really uses things like that. And then when you see Doyle and the way they're just working on visuals, like I think when he's in that scene, it's as simple as like they're just showing you how you could shoot something, and then he just like literally finds this little alley and he goes through, and then all of a sudden he creates one of those famous frame within a frame shots.
Mm-hmm.
So it's pretty cool behind the scenes stuff if you look up the cinematographer, because he's so connected to it. He's got some great stuff to show you some more insight on it. But I just again, when he's really one of the reasons I love the film, because I can just watch a film visually. It turns handy to me, and it's just the motion that the actors carry, the way they move, how simple they move through the scenes, and then just the way the whole thing just kind of develops. It's just such a beautiful story.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's like, even though it's focused on these two main characters, it's like there are plenty of other characters around them. There's the couples that they are renting from, and they have these. And one of them has these games of mahjong that go on throughout the night sometimes. And one of the best scenes, I think, in the entire movie, or at least one of the most entertaining scenes, is when they're actually having the mahjong game over at where Mr. Chow is staying, and they're in his room together, and they feel like they have to basically stay in the room all night because so to not elicit suspicion as far as what may or may not be going on.
Yeah. That is a great scene. I love that. That's when they share noodles or something like that, and they're just kind of waiting. Yeah, that was a great scene. I also like the character's friend at work.
Yeah,
he just seems like such a goofball, but he kind of adds a nice dynamic from because they're very serious and very, it's very introspective and all that. And then you got him, and he's one of those. Doesn't give it's not like it's a comic relief punch, but it's just something about him that I like, kind of loosens things up as you see things, just the way he acts and all that.
Well, and he's the one who makes him suspicious of his wife.
Yeah.
But I love the scene before that with them is basically him coming in, and it's like, hey, I need like $30 to I need money after getting out of the hospital. And it's like going through that story. It's like, yeah, you're right, there is some comic relief in there, but at the same time it's there's also a friendly dynamic to it that also comes through.
And it's nice because I feel like there's moments like that you'll get, and they break it up from the seriousness of everything.
Yeah,
it's not something that's big, laugh out loud funny or anything, but it's like those nice, the whole film has a lot of subtleties to it. So it's like one of those other many layers that this film just goes through. And then also just the use of color is just outstanding. So especially the dresses that Maggie Chung uses are just amazing. Them and the patterns on them is just it's like I said, it's definitely a visual feast, man.
Yeah, it's a beautiful movie to just look at. I mean, and that's something that I've noticed in other Wong Kar-Wai films that I've seen, like 24/6, and it is his section of the anthology film Eros. Did you ever see that one?
Yep.
Yeah. But yeah, the visual aspect of that, and just in general, like it's been said, just the way he shoots smoking, like is just really beautiful.
I like that. It almost has that French cinema type of vibe, because you can watch a lot of French cinema, then after that, you're like, I'm gonna get a pack of cigarettes or something like that. They make it work, man. I don't know.
Yeah, and the scene, it's funny. It's like it's interesting to hear that like he's very open to interpretation with his actors, because one of the film, and I think one of the reasons we talked about this movie for the first time was, some of the movies that I've seen of his sort of remind me of Kubrick. It's like he really strikes me as kind of a perfectionist in the way he shoots things, and in the way his performers move, and the way he uses music and as well.
Yeah, I just think he's very much. I think he's just very good collaborator. But it just, but he. I know I've heard stuff with Doyle say they'll frame something, and he just literally looks at Doyle and goes, "Chris, you can do better."
Yeah.
So I think there's a way of like, and he's like, God damn it, he's right. But I think there's a way, he seems to have a way. He seems to be able to work with people really well. But I think he has more of a subtle way of pushing that. So if people are bringing something to the table, it seems like he's willing to accept that, but he's going to still have his hand in it and bring it into the next level. Because you look at In the Mood for Love, it looks extremely well crafted and intentional.
Yeah.
It is extremely well crafted, but it looks very intentional. It looks like he had a big script, like things pinpointed down. I forget how long it took. It was over a year. I just can't remember like how the filming process went, but it was a long filming process.
Yeah.
And I know he takes a long time too. So just that.
Yeah, and you look at a scene like and one of the scenes that really kind of reminds me of the way Kubrick would shoot scene is the scene in the diner where they're asking, they're basically dancing around these, she's asking questions of him as far as like, or he's asking questions of her as far as like a bag for. He wants to get one of her bags, and then he mentions the tie, and basically it's them kind of dancing around what we've already come to suspect.
Yeah, I love those shots. So I'm a big fan of anything shot in a diner type of thing. So that's awesome when you get like Hong Kong diner feel, and they have the jade cups.
Yeah,
drinking the coffee. So that's a great scene, and I like that one too, because that was the whole point with the he wasn't even thinking straight, where it's that whole like you want the same purse that she's got, that your neighbor is going to have.
Mm-hmm.
And then that was I like that a lot.
I want to touch a little bit on the ending, and because of the fact that I've watched it a couple of times, and it's really kind of interesting, because we go a little bit further in time, like a year passes, and he goes to Singapore to work at a newspaper, and she's stuck in Hong Kong. And then a few years pass after that, and you get the impression that their lives have essentially moved on. Mm-hmm. And it's funny because of the fact that one of the time they sort of have these times in passing where it's like they may connect with one another, but they also don't. And we see her later, and she has a kid, and it sort of, we don't necessarily get a question about as to whether she's still with her husband at the time, and also whether he's with his wife.
Yeah, that's definitely, they definitely leave some interpretation there. That's one of the things I like a lot about art house films too, is sometimes they allow you to like think about these things along. But that tape goes back to when I was talking about it at the beginning, about like how things kind of come circular.
Yeah.
And that cinematography too, is about like how there's a lot of frames within frames that give you that kind of distance, that give you that feel about being watched. But then it also has a disconnection type of feel. And I feel like that kind of comes full circle at the end, where they keep missing each other. Mm-hmm. And there's always that slight disconnect. Like they can never really kind of figure it out. And for me, that's what I kind of took away more at the end of anything. It's just like how something beautiful could have almost happened.
Yeah.
It's in that's kind of like that. Oh,
Yeah, and it really makes you it really makes you feel for them because of the fact that it's like they work so hard to dance to not give in to any romantic urges that they might have had towards each other, that they may have lost something. And that ending scene with him in Cambodia is just going back to one of the conversations that he had with his friend. Really makes you realize that he probably feels like he probably should have taken more chances by the end.
yeah, and that's like what a great life thing, right? It doesn't like reflect at one point in life going, should have, like, should take that chance, should I have done that? Which I believe too when he was whispering the secret into the wall, right?
Yeah.
Which that plays a big role into sequel, which is 2046, and which is actually in the film in the movie for Love, the hotel room he's at is actually 2046, which were the sequel, which I think I love things like that. I love the little connections. But yeah, I just think it's so great. It's everything. You get a lot of that. You see in the beginning, the middle, how they're just and they're fighting that, and then just seeing those misconnections at the end. I think it leads to that human emotion. And we can all relate to that, like missing on those misconnections. Those like, what would happen if I'd done this? If I've taken a chance with that, and then I think it wraps up pretty nicely though.
Yeah. And it's a wonderful film. Again, it is for sure on the Criterion channel, and I do believe it is on HBO Max still. So if you haven't had a chance to watch it, I love the second you really start to give yourself over to world cinema. I think your options as a moviegoer just exponentially rise. And they get richer and richer. And it's like, Wong Kar-Wai is one of those filmmakers who it's like, I'm still just at the start of getting to know as a filmmaker. But I mean, I know this one definitely makes me curious I probably won't necessarily put down for the box set, but I mean, I definitely want to watch more of his films. And I definitely now want to watch 2046 in context of having seen In the Mood for Love, because
I think even like one to go back, like Chungking Express and Falling Angels. Those again, him and Doyle as a director DP work together, and there's a vibe that kind of goes into it. And when you start to go back, you see a lot of films they work on, and you can see how that climax is like in Mood for Love.
Yeah.
They did work. I'm pretty sure they both worked with each other in 2046 as well. But still, it was really in Mood for Love, where it just like you could see them hit their top performance. I love world cinema. I think if you're like one of those people that get kind of bored and you're just watching certain type of films over and over again, I think one thing world cinema does is when you start paying attention to that, you start looking outside your own comfort level. One, you see how much people are like each other.
Yeah.
We can relate to this story because it's a couple in Hong Kong, but we have human emotions. We can relate to them. That, and then just the fact of like, you always get presented with new visuals, new things, new customs, and you can also use it. It could just be quite stimulating, and also, there's other countries make classics. Yeah. There's other great films out there.
Yeah, I actually just watched for one of my repertory reviews today. I actually just watched my first film from Agnes Varda.
Oh, okay.
I just watched Cleo from 5 to 7, and I thought it was wonderful. And it's funny because of the fact that it's like one of the things that struck me was it's like it would not surprise me at one bit if Richard Linklater was inspired by this to do the Before movies the way he did.
Oh yeah,
because it's very much in that same vein of the way the stories are told. But yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to getting into more of her work. Truffaut is somebody I absolutely adore.
Oh yeah, Truffaut's amazing.
Kurosawa, Tarkovsky is one of my all-time
Same here. Yeah, I love that. Oh, I love him.
Yeah. It's I mean, and the thing is, it's like, especially if it's like it, especially with somebody like Kurosawa, where it's like you can see where some of your favorite Hollywood movies got their inspiration from.
Well, even like where you got Kurosawa, like I can't remember if it's I believe you would say it's A Fistful of Dollars, or what, I forget what one of the first one it is, one of the first two in that trilogy. You go ahead and you look at Sergio Leone's Good, the Bad, the Ugly, and all those that matches up with a lot of old, like, sorry, I just got those confused, but Kurosawa, a lot of old samurai films match up to a lot of that Sergio Leone cowboy film.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? And there's a lot of like, you see those like parallels very easy, and then you can see that again translate. They really do work in different elements. You know, you could see that influence, and it's like it's worth going back to check it because they're great films. There's a lot of people that have ideas that are amazing, and just also just the type of eras. Like you're looking at Kurosawa. I remember when Takeshi Miike, I'm blanking on his film he made. He made a very big samurai film now that he has been doing as of recently too, and it was in your mid 2000, and he talks about the idea of like back then too, like not being used to be able to get all these guys who can ride horses, and the horse riding, and then now that's kind of a lost art in the cinema of Japan, so not many people can do that. There's more specialized people. Very interesting, because like where I'm going with that is just how like you can see how these films just progress and how the cinema changes like over the years, but then again, reconnecting with those, you could be the artist that finds something that you connect with, and it works into your work. I mean, there's a lot of great ideas out there, and going back, I love Japanese cinema a lot too. I mean, especially we had early 2000, that horror boom, the J horror. I almost always liked the original better, but they were really creative, and it's like that's why it's always good to be versed and check things out.
Yeah. Well, Chris, thank you very much for joining me today to talk about this.
Oh, thank you, man. I appreciate it. Like I said, I love this film, and I hope people check it out and enjoy it.
I'd like to thank Christopher for joining me to discuss In the Mood for Love, Wong Kar-Wai's the Criterion Collection's Wong Kar-Wai box set comes out on Tuesday, March 23rd, and it's well worth checking out. And that's it for this episode of the Sonic Cinema Podcast. Coming up, we talk about one of the great anime directors of all time. And we're also going to be starting a new segment, or I'm pretty sure I'm going to make a new segment. It's about movies from the past and whether they hold up on their own merits versus whether they just are sort of established classics. And I'm looking forward to sharing that discussion with you, and I think it's going to be a yearly thing that I continue. For now, though, this is Brian Scuttle. Subscribe at the Sonic Cinema Podcast YouTube channel or at Apple and Google Podcasts, as well as Spotify. You can also check us out at patreon.com/Sonic Cinema. But as always, the main place to keep up with me is at www.sonic-cinema.com. Thank you very much.